The phone's shrill cry cut through the drone of the rain and the hum of the refrigerator. It was an alien sound in the small apartment, a digital shriek that promised nothing good after 10 p.m. on a Tuesday. Maya Reyes, still in her damp barista uniform, let it ring 3 times, hoping it was a wrong number, a telemarketer who hadn't gotten the memo. On the 4th ring, a knot of ice formed in her stomach. She snatched it off the kitchen counter. "Hello? Am I speaking with Maya Reyes?" The voice was male, calm, and utterly devoid of warmth. It was the kind of professional calm that is more terrifying than any panic. "This is she." "Ms. Reyes, my name is Dr. Evans. I'm a surgeon at Riverbend Medical Center. I'm calling about your brother, Leo Reyes. He's been brought into our emergency room." The world tilted on its axis. The worn linoleum of her kitchen floor seemed to fall away, leaving her suspended in a cold, black void. "Leo? What happened?" "He was involved in a multi-vehicle accident on the I-88 overpass. He's in critical condition, Ms. Reyes. I need you to listen to me very carefully. He has significant internal injuries, primarily a lacerated spleen, and is experiencing massive internal bleeding." Each word was a hammer blow, shattering the fragile peace of her evening. Just an hour ago, her world had been small and manageable. It had been the scent of burnt coffee and the ache in her feet after an 8-hour shift at the daily grind. It had been the text from Leo that had lit up her phone, a splash of defiant color against the grayness of her day. It was a photo of his latest canvas, a chaotic swirl of sunset oranges and deep violets. "Think this one's finally done," he'd written. She had smiled, a real smile, the kind that only he could coax out of her. "It's amazing, Leo. Just don't forget to clean your brushes this time. Mom's ghost will haunt you if you ruin another sink." His reply came back instantly. "Never. Talk tonight after your shift at the mart? Don't work too hard." That version of her life, the one from 60 minutes ago, was now a distant country she could never visit again. "We're preparing him for emergency surgery to stop the bleeding," Dr. Evans continued, his voice pulling her back to the horrifying present. "But we have a serious complication. Your brother's blood type is AB negative. That's rare enough, but his blood panel also came back positive for a rare antibody, anti-JAK3. It means we can't use standard AB negative blood. We need a perfect match." "A match? What does that mean?" Maya whispered, her knuckles white as she gripped the counter for support. "It means we've used the only 2 units we had in the entire hospital just to stabilize him. The state blood bank is in the capital, 3 hours away on a good day. With this storm," he trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. The rain, which had been a background murmur, was now a roar, hammering against the window pane like a fist. The TV weather bug had been flashing a flash flood warning for the last hour. "No couriers can get through, no helicopters can fly, we're cut off." Hope was a dying ember. Maya could feel it turning to ash in her chest. "So, what are you saying? There's nothing you can do?" "I'm not saying that," Dr. Evans said, a flicker of urgency finally entering his tone. "I've been on the phone with every blood bank and hospital in a 100-mile radius. There's one place. Our records show that Leo participated in a directed donation for a friend about a year ago. 2 units of his own blood were drawn and stored. They are a perfect match. They're being held in cryogenic storage at Crestfall General Hospital." A jolt went through Maya, sharp and electric. Crestfall General, that was less than a mile from her apartment. It was back in her part of town, on the right side of the river, that was currently threatening to swallow the city whole. "I can get it," she said, the words tumbling out before she could think. "I can go there right now. I'm 5 minutes away." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Ms. Reyes, it's not that simple. There are protocols." "He's my brother," Maya cut in, her voice raw. "I'll get it." "Okay," Dr. Evans sighed, a sound of weary resignation. "Okay, go to Crestfall. Ask for the administration office. You'll need to be persistent. Get the blood, Maya. Leo doesn't have much time." The line went dead. Maya stood frozen for a second, the doctor's words echoing in the sudden silence. He doesn't have much time. She didn't grab a coat. She didn't change out of her work clothes. She grabbed her keys, her wallet, and sprinted out the door, plunging into the maelstrom of the storm and a bureaucracy that would prove to be even more treacherous. The lobby of Crestfall General Hospital was an island of sterile calm in the tempestuous night. The air was cool and smelled of bleach and latex. Outside, The wind howled and threw sheets of rain against the thick plate glass windows. But inside, the only sounds were the quiet hum of the ventilation and the squeak of a janitor's cart down a long, polished hallway. It felt wrong, this quietude, when Maya's entire world was screaming. She ran to the front desk, her sneakers leaving wet tracks on the gleaming floor. A woman with a helmet of gray hair and sharp, penciled eyebrows looked up from her computer, her expression a careful mask of professional boredom. "I need to get to the administration office," Maya panted, slicking wet hair from her face. "It's an emergency. My brother, Leo Reyes, is at Riverbend Medical. They need blood that's stored here. Dr. Evans sent me." The receptionist, whose name tag read Doris, typed something into her computer with agonizing slowness. "Administration closed for the evening at 9 o'clock, dear." "No, you don't understand. A doctor called. He said it was life or death." Doris sighed, a put-upon sound. "The blood bank is handled by administration. If they're closed, they're closed. You'll have to come back during business hours. 8 a.m. tomorrow." "He could be dead by 8 a.m. tomorrow." Maya's voice cracked, loud and sharp in the hushed lobby. A security guard standing by the entrance shifted his weight, his gaze landing on her. "Ma'am, please lower your voice," Doris said, her own voice dropping to a condescending whisper. "This is a hospital. Then act like one. Help me save someone." The security guard took a step forward. "Is there a problem here?" Just then, a woman in a perfectly tailored gray pantsuit emerged from a hallway, holding a leather portfolio. She had a severe, angular haircut and a face that looked like it had never broken into a smile. She radiated an aura of cold, unassailable authority. "What is all this commotion, Doris?" she asked, her voice crisp. "This young woman is causing a disturbance, Miss Caldwell," Doris reported, clearly relieved to pass the problem up the chain of command. "She's demanding access to the blood bank." Miss Caldwell's pale blue eyes landed on Maya, sizing her up and dismissing her in the same instant. "The blood bank is closed." "Please," Maya begged, turning to this new, more formidable obstacle. "My brother, Leo Reyes, Riverbend Medical, Dr. Evans. There are 2 units of his own blood here. He'll die without them. The storm—" "I am well aware of the weather," Miss Caldwell said, cutting her off, "and I understand your distress. However, hospital policy is perfectly clear. We cannot simply release biological materials from our facility without the proper authorization. Dr. Evans authorized it." "Did he fax a formal, signed request on Riverbend letterhead to our records department and receive a confirmation receipt?" Caldwell asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. "He's a surgeon in the middle of an emergency. He's trying to save my brother's life." "Then he is precisely where he should be," Caldwell said with a nod, as if Maya had just made her point for her. "And my job is to protect this institution. Protocol exists for a reason, young lady. Chain of custody is a legal and medical necessity. We require a licensed and bonded medical courier service to transport all blood products." The rage that had been simmering in Maya's gut began to boil. It was a hot, choking feeling. She was speaking English, using simple words, but it was like this woman was hearing a foreign language. The only words she understood were protocol and policy. "Every courier service in the city is shut down?" Maya yelled, past the point of caring about the security guard or Doris's disapproving glares. "The roads are flooded. Don't you get it? The rules don't matter when someone is dying." Miss Caldwell's expression did not change, but a glacial coldness entered her eyes. "The rules matter more than ever in a crisis. They are what prevent catastrophic mistakes. Imagine the liability for this hospital if we were to hand over a sensitive medical product to an unauthorized, emotionally compromised civilian who then, say, tripped and fell in the rain, compromising the blood's integrity. Imagine the lawsuit. My hands are tied." "Your hands are tied?" Maya repeated the words, her voice dripping with disbelief and fury. "My brother is bleeding to death on a table 10 miles from here, and your hands are tied? This isn't about liability. It's about a human life. It's his blood. He donated it." "Ms. Reyes," Caldwell said, her voice now hard as steel, "your personal circumstances, while tragic, are not my concern. My concern is the proper functioning and legal protection of Crestfall General Hospital. I am sorry for your brother's situation, but there is nothing more I can do for you. I suggest you go home and wait for a call from the doctor. Now, if you do not leave the premises, I will have security escort you out." She turned, her back straight, her dismissal absolute. She was a wall, a smooth, polished, unscalable wall of pure, unfeeling bureaucracy. The security guard placed a firm hand on Maya's arm. "Ma'am, you need to go." Defeated, Maya let him guide her toward the doors. The anger was so intense it felt like she might vibrate apart. It wasn't just anger at Caldwell, it was anger at the whole world, at a system that had processes for everything except for compassion. As the automatic doors slid open, letting in a gust of wind and rain, she was consumed by a tidal wave of hopelessness. She had failed. Leo was going to die because of a fax machine and a woman who cared more about lawsuits than life. She stumbled back to her beat-up sedan, the rain plastering her hair to her face, mingling with the hot tears of rage and grief streaming down her cheeks. She collapsed into the driver's seat, slamming her fists against the steering wheel, a raw, wounded cry tearing from her throat. Her car, her little bubble of failure, was an island in the raging sea of the hospital parking lot. Her phone buzzed, a lifeline in the darkness. She fumbled for it with trembling hands. It was Dr. Evans. "Did you get it?" he asked, his voice strained. "No," she sobbed, the story pouring out of her in a torrent of broken words. "She wouldn't. Policy, liability, courier." "Damn it, Caldwell. Of course," he swore, the sound raw with his own frustration. "I should have known. She's a legendary nightmare. Listen to me, Maya. I am breaking about a dozen rules right now. I can't be having this conversation. But I used to work at Crestfall. I know people. The blood bank technician on the night shift, his name is George. He's a good man. I managed to get him on his personal cell. He knows the situation. I just sent the electronic release from my terminal directly to his workstation. It's not the proper way, but it's time-stamped and official. He can't bring it out to you, he'd be fired on the spot. But he said he'll have it packed and ready at loading dock B, around the back of the hospital. That's all I can do, Maya. The rest is up to you. I have to go back in." The call ended. Maya looked through the rain-lashed windshield at the sprawling, monolithic hospital. Loading dock B. It was a chance, a crazy, forbidden chance. She looked at her phone, at the picture of Leo's painting, so full of life and color. She thought of Miss Caldwell's cold, dead eyes. My hands are tied. A new resolve, hard and sharp as glass, cut through her despair. If the system wouldn't help, she would break the system. She wasn't asking anymore. She killed the engine, got out of the car, and began to walk, not toward the front entrance, but around the building, into the shadows and the teeth of the storm. In the trunk of her car, forgotten for years, sat a pair of old, battered running shoes, relics of a life she thought she'd left behind forever. She would need them. Loading dock B was a cavernous concrete bay, poorly lit by a single, flickering fluorescent light that cast long, dancing shadows. The wind howled through the open space, creating a symphony of whistles and groans from the metal roll-up doors. Maya, drenched and shivering, huddled behind a large dumpster, her heart hammering against her ribs. This felt illicit, dangerous. A small side door, marked "Authorized Personnel Only," creaked open. A man in blue scrubs with a kind, worried face peered out. It had to be George. His eyes darted nervously around the empty lot before landing on her. He beckoned her forward with a quick, jerky motion. Maya ran from her hiding spot, her sneakers squelching on the wet asphalt. "Here," George whispered, shoving a gray, hard-shelled box into her hands. It was a specialized medical cooler, surprisingly heavy. On its lid was a small digital display. It's packed in phase, change material, but it's not a cryo unit. The temperature is stable, but only for a limited time. You've got maybe 90 minutes, tops, before the red cells start to degrade. The timer's on the lid. It's already started. Go. Please, just go. I never saw you. He glanced over his shoulder, then disappeared back inside, the door clicking shut with a terrifying finality. Maya looked down at the cooler. It felt impossibly heavy, a burden of hope and dread. The timer on the lid glowed with stark, green numbers. 90, 0, 89, 59, 89, 50, 8. Each descending number was a beat of her brother's weakening heart. She sprinted back to her car, her mind racing. 90 minutes. 10 miles. In this storm, driving would be slow, but she should be able to make it. She carefully placed the cooler on the passenger seat, buckling the seatbelt over it as if it were a child. She fired up the engine, cranked the wipers to their frantic maximum, and peeled out of the parking lot. She made it exactly 2 blocks. The underpass that led to the main crosstown artery was a lake. Brown, swirling water lapped at the doors of cars that had stalled out, their hazard lights blinking feebly in the deluge. It was impassable. Panic clawed at her throat. She threw the car into reverse, tires screeching, and tried a side street. A massive oak tree, a century-old giant, had been torn from the earth and lay across the entire road like a fallen god, blocked. She tried a third route, a winding residential road. It, too, was a river of mud and debris. Everywhere she turned, the storm had checkmated her. The city's arteries were clogged and dead. She looked at the timer on the cooler. 82. 17. Nearly 8 minutes wasted. 8 minutes Leo didn't have. She pulled over, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Her mind was a maelstrom of frantic, useless calculations. There was no way to drive, no way through. It was over. And then, an insane, impossible thought sparked in the darkness of her mind. 10 miles. She looked at the distant, hazy glow of the downtown skyline, where Riverbend Medical Center stood like a promise. 10 miles. In high school, she was the state champion in the 1,600 meter and the 3,200 meter. 10 miles had been a long training run, a challenge she'd meet before the sun was fully up. But that was a different Maya. That Maya was 16, wiry, and full of limitless energy. That Maya had a future. This Maya was 24, exhausted from 2 jobs, fueled by caffeine and regret, and wearing soaking wet jeans. It was a stupid idea, a suicidal idea. It was the only idea left. With a choked sob that was half despair, half fury, she killed the engine for the second time that night. She threw open her door, ran to the trunk, and dug past a spare tire and jumper cables. There they were, her old running shoes. The rubber was cracked, the fabric faded, but they were hers. They were the last remnant of the girl who could fly. She kicked off her flimsy, soaked work sneakers and pulled on the old shoes, lacing them tight with trembling fingers. The fit was still perfect. She slammed the trunk, grabbed the precious cooler from the passenger seat, and took a deep, shuddering breath of the rain-choked air. The timer read 81:4. She looked toward the distant city lights, clutched the handle of the cooler, and began to run. The first mile was a special kind of hell. The 15-pound cooler was an awkward, brutish thing, its hard plastic edges banging rhythmically and painfully against her right leg. It threw off her balance, forcing her into a lopsided, ungainly gait. Her lungs, accustomed to the stale air of a coffee shop and a stockroom, screamed in protest against the sudden demand for oxygen. A fire ignited in her chest, a searing pain that radiated with every ragged gasp. Her jeans, heavy with rainwater, chafed her skin raw. The cold rain was a relentless enemy, soaking through her thin shirt, stealing her body heat, making her shiver uncontrollably even as she was sweating with exertion. This wasn't running. This was a clumsy, desperate scramble. Her mind was a traitor, replaying her failures on a loop. You gave up, Maya. You had a full ride, a scholarship. You quit. The voice of her old coach, Mr. Cation Davison, echoed in her memory. Not his encouraging shouts, but the quiet disappointment in his eyes when she told him she couldn't go, that her family needed her after her dad died. She had chosen responsibility, she had chosen to stay. And this was her reward. A dead-end life and a punishing run to save the one person who made it all worthwhile. She pushed the thoughts away, focusing on the rhythm of her feet slapping the wet pavement. Left, right, breathe in, breathe out. She chanted Leo's name in her head like a mantra. Leo! 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 The timer on the cooler glowed, a malevolent green eye in the darkness. 71:30. By mile 3, she found a strange, painful rhythm. She had shifted the cooler to her left hand, trying to even out the strain. The burning in her lungs had subsided into a dull, constant ache. She was running through a sleeping suburban neighborhood. Dark houses with manicured lawns stood silent witness to her desperate pilgrimage. For a moment, she felt a pang of bitterness. Inside those houses, people were warm and dry, their families safe. They had no idea that a life was being measured in her agonizing footsteps. As she turned onto a wider, better-lit commercial street, the world intruded again. A pair of headlights sliced through the rain, slowing to match her pace. A police cruiser. A cold dread, colder than the rain, washed over her. The passenger window slid down with an electric whir. "Ma'am," a man's voice called out. firm and authoritative. "Ma'am, you need to get out of the road. There's a severe weather advisory. It's not safe." Maya didn't stop. She couldn't. She glanced over, her face a mask of rain and exhaustion. "I know, I have to go." "I need you to stop, ma'am," the officer insisted. The cruiser pulled ahead and angled toward the curb, blocking her path. The officer, a man in his mid-30s with a tired, jaded face, got out of his car. His name tag read Miller. "Please," Maya gasped, her chest heaving. "You don't understand. My brother, he's at Riverbend. I have to get this to him." She gestured with the cooler. Officer Miller's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixing on the box. "What's in the box?" "It's blood," she said, the words coming out in a rush. It was the worst possible answer. The entire dynamic shifted. She was no longer a citizen in need of help. She was a suspect. Miller's hand drifted instinctively closer to his belt. "Blood? Ma'am, I need you to stop right now and put the box down on the ground." "No. There's no time." She pointed a trembling finger at the timer, which had dipped below the 1-hour mark. 58:12. "Look, it's on a timer. It'll go bad. He'll die." Her panic only confirmed his suspicions. To his eyes, she wasn't a desperate sister. She was a hysterical woman, running through a storm with what was almost certainly stolen medical property. She was a problem to be managed. "I'm trying to help you, but you need to calm down and cooperate," he said, his voice taking on a patronizing edge that set her teeth on fire. "We can get this all sorted out down at the station." The station. The words hit her like a physical blow. The station meant questions. It meant paperwork. It meant delays that would stretch into hours. It was another Mizapar. Caldwell, another wall, another death sentence for Leo. In that instant, something primal snapped inside her. It was the cornered animal instinct to fight or flee. With a raw scream that was pure defiance, she chose to flee. "I don't have time!" she shrieked, and she bolted. She feinted left, then darted right, scrambling past the front of his cruiser and into the mouth of a dark, narrow alleyway between two storefronts. She could hear him yelling, "Ma'am, stop! Police!" But she didn't look back. She plunged into the darkness, the alley reeking of wet garbage and despair. The sound of his shouts faded behind her. He wouldn't pursue on foot, not for this. He'd get on his radio. She knew it. Now she wasn't just a runner. She was a fugitive. The adrenaline from the encounter with Miller carried her for another mile, but when it faded, it left a void of bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. She emerged from the alley into a bleak industrial park. Warehouses and chain-link fences, no lights, no people, just her, the storm, and the relentless countdown. 44, 50, 6. She was halfway there. 5 miles down, 5 to go. Her body was screaming. A vicious cramp seized her right calf, hot and sharp as a knife. Her leg buckled. She cried out, stumbling, trying to stay upright, but her coordination was gone. She went down, hard, on the slick, broken pavement. The cooler flew from her grasp, skidding across the concrete with a sickening scrape. It came to rest against a fence post. For a long moment, Maya just lay there, the rough asphalt pressing into her cheek, rain and tears mixed, running in grimy rivers down her face. This was it, the wall. She couldn't get up. Her body had nothing left. The pain in her calf was blinding. The exhaustion was a physical weight pressing her into the ground. It was too much. The distance was too great. The obstacles were too many. She was failing. She was letting Leo down. A sob of utter defeat shook her entire body. As she lay there, contemplating the crushing reality of her failure, a sliver of light cut through the darkness. A heavy steel door on one of the warehouses creaked open, spilling a warm, yellow glow onto the wet pavement. An old man, bald with a magnificent white beard and grease-stained overalls, stood silhouetted in the doorway. He must have been a night watchman or a mechanic working late. He didn't speak. He just looked at her crumpled form on the ground, at the medical cooler a few feet away. His face held no judgment, no suspicion. Only a quiet, profound understanding. He disappeared back inside for a moment, then re-emerged. He walked slowly over to her, his boots splashing in the puddles. He knelt down, not too close, and placed a plastic bottle of water and a small, dry shop towel on the ground beside her. He looked her in the eye. "Godspeed, kid," he said, his voice a low rumble. Then he stood up, walked back to his workshop, and closed the door, leaving her alone once more in the light and the dark. It was a small thing, a bottle of water, a dry towel, 2 words, but it was everything. It was a crack in the wall of apathy that had been closing in on her all night. It was a reminder that not everyone was a Caldwell or a Miller, that there was still goodness in the world, even in the darkest, most forgotten corners. A new strength, not from her muscles but from somewhere deeper, surged through her. She pushed herself up, wincing as her calf protested. She crawled to the cooler, her hands shaking, and checked the timer. 38:10. She hadn't broken it. She uncapped the water bottle and drank, the cool liquid a balm to her raw throat. She used the towel to wipe the grit and rain from her face. She got to her feet, slowly, painfully. She picked up the cooler. The pain was still there, a constant, throbbing drumbeat. But now, it was just background noise. Her focus was absolute. She knew she would make it, or she would die trying. The last 3 miles were a blur of pain and will. She left the industrial park behind and entered the outskirts of the downtown core. The streets were better lit but eerily empty, abandoned to the storm. The Riverbend Medical Center tower was now visible, a pillar of light in the distance, its red emergency sign a pulsating beacon, a finish line. She was no longer running, but shuffling, staggering. It was a grotesque parody of her old, fluid form. Her arms and legs were leaden. Every breath was a ragged, painful gasp. But she was moving forward. Her mind, stripped of all non-essential thought, became a gallery of memories. Her father, laughing as he pushed her on a swing, higher and higher. The feeling of breaking the tape at the state finals, the roar of the crowd a physical force. Holding Leo for the first time, his tiny hand wrapped around her finger. The weight of her mother's grief. The quiet, resolute click of the door, as she left her coach's office for the last time. All of it, the triumphs, the sacrifices, the love, the loss, it was all fuel. This run wasn't just for Leo anymore. It was for the girl who had given up her dream. It was a penance and a reclamation. She was proving to herself, to the ghosts of her past, that the fire was never truly extinguished. 2 blocks to go. 1 block. She could see the entrance now, the sweeping curve of the ambulance bay, the automatic doors. With a final, desperate, primal surge, she forced her legs into something resembling a sprint. She was a wild, soaked apparition, a force of nature against the storm. She burst through the automatic doors of the Riverbend ER, the sudden warmth and bright light a shock to her system. The scene was controlled chaos. Doctors, nurses, the smell of antiseptic, all heads turned to her. She didn't have the strength to speak a full sentence. She held up the cooler like a trophy, a sacrifice. "For Leo Reyes!" she screamed, her voice a raw, broken thing. "The blood!" And then her legs, her loyal, battered servants, finally gave out. She pitched forward, the world dissolving into a tunnel of black. As she fell, the cooler slipped from her grasp, sliding across the polished floor and coming to a gentle stop at the feet of a waiting Dr. Evans. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her completely was the doctor snatching up the gray box and rushing it through a set of double doors. The last thing she heard was his voice yelling, "We've got it! We've got it!" The timer on the cooler, forgotten on the floor, read 3:47. Maya awoke to a gentle, rhythmic beeping. Her first sensation was one of profound softness. She was lying on a bed with clean, crisp sheets. An IV tube was taped to the back of her hand, feeding a clear fluid into her veins. Her wet, gritty clothes were gone, replaced by a thin, starchy hospital gown. For a disorienting moment, she was adrift, unsure of where she was or what had happened. Then, the night came rushing back in a tidal wave of memory. Caldwell, the run, the police, the fall, the final collapse. Leo. She sat up, a bolt of panic lancing through her. A doctor was standing by the window, looking out at a world washed clean by the storm. It was Dr. Evans. He turned, a tired but genuine smile gracing his features. "Easy there," he said, his voice gentle. "You've been through quite an ordeal." "Leo?" was the only word she could manage, her throat dry and raspy. "Is he?" "He's alive, Maya," Dr. Evans said, and the 2 words were the most beautiful she had ever heard. "He's alive and he's stable. The surgery was a success. The blood got here just in time. It made all the difference. You saved his life." A wave of relief so powerful it felt like a physical force washed over her, and she collapsed back into the pillows. A fresh wave of tears of joy, this time streaming down her face. Dr. Evans pulled a chair to her bedside. You, on the other hand, gave us quite a scare. Severe dehydration, hypothermia, rhabdomyolysis from the muscle strain. We've been pumping you full of fluids all night. You'll be sore for a week, but you'll be fine. He paused, his expression shifting to one of awe. I have to ask, did you really run the whole way? Maya nodded weakly. He just shook his head, a look of disbelief on his face. 10 miles. In that storm. He hesitated for a moment. Maya, something is happening. One of the ER nurses, she was so moved by what you did. She posted a very vague account of it on her social media page during her break. No names, no hospitals, just a sister's love and a desperate race against the storm. It seems to have struck a chord. He held up his phone. It was a local news website. The headline read, Mystery Woman's Midnight Run, a hero's dash through deadly storm to save brother's life. The story was going viral. Over the next 2 days, the world outside Maya's hospital room changed completely. Her name, somehow leaked, became public knowledge. The vague social media post blossomed into a full-blown media phenomenon. 10 Mile Run was the #1 trending topic in the country. News vans were camped outside Riverbend Medical like a besieging army. The narrative was simple, powerful, and irresistible. A story of pure love and indomitable will against impossible odds. The system, exposed to the harsh light of public scrutiny, began to react. First, an administrator from Riverbend, a kind-faced woman who was the polar opposite of Miss Caldwell, came to Maya's room. She informed Maya that the hospital board was so moved by her story that they were covering all of her and Leo's medical expenses. Furthermore, she assured her, a formal inquiry had been launched by the Regional Health Authority into the procedural failures at Crestfall General. The public, now armed with a name, had flooded Crestfall's phone lines and social media with outrage. Miss B.I. Caldwell, the administrator informed her with a hint of satisfaction, had been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Next came a police sergeant, a veteran with weary eyes and a respectful demeanor. He was Officer Miller's superior. He apologized profusely on behalf of the department. Officer Miller was following protocol for a suspicious situation, the sergeant explained, but he failed to use discretion or properly assess the human element of the crisis. He has been placed on administrative review, and we will be using this incident in our crisis intervention training moving forward. It was a strange, dizzying experience. The very institutions that had been her antagonists were now falling over themselves to apologize, to make amends. The power of her one desperate act had sent ripples she could never have imagined. On the third day, she was finally strong enough to see Leo. They wheeled her chair to his room in the ICU. He was pale and weak, his leg in a complex scaffold of metal, but he was awake. His eyes, the same warm brown as hers, lit up when he saw her. They told me what you did, he whispered, his voice hoarse. You're crazy. Takes one to know one. She whispered back, taking his hand. They didn't need to say more. Everything was in that touch. Later that afternoon, there was a knock on her door. She expected another nurse or doctor. Instead, a woman she recognized instantly from television commercials and Olympic broadcasts stepped inside. It was Zara Vance, the 800-meter gold medalist, a legend known for her ferocious finishing kick and her own story of overcoming a career-threatening injury. She was tall, poised, and radiated an aura of calm, powerful confidence. Maya stared, speechless. Maya Reyes? Zara asked, her voice exactly as it sounded on TV. She smiled. I hope you don't mind. I have friends on the board here. They let me slip in. She pulled up the same chair Dr. Evans had used. I read your story. Everyone read your story. And I've heard thousands of stories about athletes pushing their limits, believe me. But they're usually running for a medal, for a record, for a shoe contract. Zara leaned forward, her gaze intense and searching. You were running for something else. You weren't running for glory. You were running for love. That's a different kind of fuel, Maya. It's a purer kind. That grit, that fire you showed, the ability to push past every rational limit when everything is on the line, you can't teach that. It's either in you or it isn't. She paused, letting her words sink in. I run a foundation. We find promising athletes who, for whatever reason, got knocked off the path. Kids who didn't get a fair shot. I saw your high school track records. You were the real deal. Zara Vance looked Maya dead in the eye, her expression deadly serious. When you're out of here, and your brother is on the mend, I want to offer you a spot in my program. I want to train you. Personally. I want to see what that fire can do when it's not running from desperation, but running towards a dream. I want to see what happens when we put you on a real track. The offer was so immense, so impossible, it didn't seem real. It was a fantasy from a life she had buried a long time ago. A second chance. A validation not just for the run, but for the sacrifice that had led her away from the track in the first place. This legendary woman wasn't just seeing the hero of the hour. She was seeing the champion Maya had once been, and could be again. Tears welled in Maya's eyes. But for the first time in a very long time, they were tears of pure, unadulterated hope. She looked at Zara, at this impossible future being handed to her, and she found her voice. "Okay," she said. The word was quiet, but it was the loudest sound in the room. 3 months later. The sun was bright, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. The air smelled of cut grass and the slightly rubbery scent of a professional running track. On the sidelines, Leo sat in a wheelchair, a sketchbook open on his lap. His leg was still healing, but the pallor of the hospital was gone, replaced by a healthy color. He was sketching the scene before him, the empty stands, the sharp white lines of the track, and the figure at its center. Maya stood on the starting line. She was no longer a frantic, soaked girl in tattered jeans. She wore professional running gear, her body lean and strong. The exhaustion was gone from her eyes, replaced by a sharp, clear focus. The ghosts of regret were silent. Zara Vance stood beside her, a stopwatch in her hand. She put a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Forget the storm, forget the run. That got you here. Now it's just you and the distance. Ready?" Maya nodded, a slow, confident smile spreading across her face. Her voiceover, if this were a movie, would be playing now. "For years, I felt like I was running in place, stuck in a life I hadn't chosen. Then, for one night, I ran for a life I couldn't lose. I never thought I'd get a second lap. But I learned that sometimes, you have to run through the darkest storm of your life to find the sunshine and the starting line on the other side." "On your mark," Zara said, her voice echoing in the quiet stadium. Maya crouched down, her fingers brushing the textured surface of the track. She looked down the long, empty lane ahead of her. She wasn't running from anything anymore. She was running towards everything. Zara clicked the stopwatch. The screen cut to black.